This week's case is about the rise and fall of the Murdaugh family in South Carolina and how death just seems to follow them. So, let's get started. Hello everyone, my name is Brandy and it's time for a true crime case or mystery with one or more of my fabulous felines. They are all right off camera, I swear, except for Billy. She's in her usual spot. Oh, Nikki's up here. Can you see her? You rarely ever see Nikki because she is my formal feral. Yeah, I'm surprised she's up here today, so that's cool. My other ones are over here. And this girl right here, Peanut, it's her birthday today. I know, you're so excited about it. She was born in 2014. So, my darling, you are 8 years old today, aren't you? And you are still ornery as ever. Yes. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back, my feline friends, and a big giant shout out to my feline fans who help support this channel. Now, I know I said with this new YouTube schedule of every 2 weeks doing a true crime story that in those off weeks that I would do like a feline fun video or a product review or something. And last week I had a lot of dental work done and they had to put in like 2 crowns. So yeah, a video was not happening. But I will do better about that going forward. I also found out last week that my full-time job wants us to start coming back into the office. Now, they do understand that most of us are way more productive at home, so they're only asking us to come into the office 2 days a week. Now, our department's kind of trying to negotiate the 1 day a week back in the office, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm grateful that we still get to work from home going forward, so I am not complaining. But I will say this new schedule I feel is really working out for me. I don't feel the burnout anymore, and when I go to sit down to do a video, I'm actually excited to do the video, and I'm not going, let's get this over with. So thank you for those that are accepting my new schedule. Merch update. Do I have a merch update? Let me look if there's a sale. There's always a sale. Oh, yeah. So starting Monday and going through the 28th of April, everything is 30% off. Just a reminder that we have a new design. Little Darth Kittius. Now, this is my magnet. It turned out so great, didn't it? But, yeah, we got hoodies and shirts and everything. So, yeah, go check out. Links in the description down below. This week's case was recommended by Stephanie Ort. I hope I'm saying your last name right. I apologize if I'm not. So thank you, Stephanie, for this recommendation. Are you ready for this wild ride? Buckle up, kids. So the Murdaugh family is a very prominent family from South Carolina. They were known as like the legal family because they're like a generation of lawyers. So to give you an idea of how long this prominent family has been around, let's start back in the beginning. So Rudolph Murdoch Sr., he started a one-man law firm operation in 1910 in South Carolina. By 1920, Randolph had become the solicitor, which that's what the district attorney's office was called back then. So he became the solicitor of the 14th district in South Carolina, and he held that position until 1940 when he died in a very tragic accident. So Randolph was killed in a collision between a train and his car. So I don't know exactly what the circumstances around it, but the Murdaugh family did sue the railway company, and the railway company did settle with the family. So after Rudolph died, the 14th district did kind of like a special appointment, and what they did is they appointed Randolph's son, who was named Randolph Murdaugh Jr., and he went by the nickname Buster. He gained the position and he served it from 1940 to 1986. Now, Buster was known for kind of his flair in the courtroom. He loved, like, acting out the murders before the juries. He would even, like, bring bloodhounds in. He just had this outlandish character. Now, there were some issues that Buster kind of had to manage, and in 1956 he actually was indicted for allegedly telling a bootlegger that he needed to move his sill into like a neighboring county to avoid getting caught by police. Buster ended up being acquitted of those charges, and then he continued with the office of district attorney until 1986, and he decided to retire at that time. And then after Buster retired, his son, Rudolph Murdoch III, ran for the office and got it. So before we get into Rudolph III, let me just go back to 1986. In 1986, the Murdaugh family was like featured in this magazine called The Carolina Lawyer, and it was this prominent magazine back then. Now, the author of the article actually called the 14th District of South Carolina Murdaugh country because the office of district attorney had been, served by a Murdaugh since 1920. Now, there was some conspiracy around the family at this time because they held the office of district attorney for so long that the justice system was kind of considered rigged in a way in the 14th district because a lot of cases would be settled out of court instead of going to trial. And when you settle out of court, it's a lot less work than going through a trial. So along with this, some saw that the Murdaugh family, this family had a lot of judicial and political power behind them, and they were able to, get things done their way or to their liking. And about this time, this is when some of the public began to scrutinize the family a little bit, saying that they had too much influence on the judicial system in the 14th district. And that opinion only got worse by 2019, which we'll get to. Buster's retired, and now Buster's son, Rudolph III, has taken office in 1986. Now, he would run unopposed in every election, and he would hold the office until 2006 when he decided to retire. Now, in 2018, Rudolph III would get an award called Order of the Palmetto Award, which is the highest award that a civilian can get in South Carolina. This award is given to those that have like a lifetime of exemplary achievement in their lives. So this was very important for the family, and they all gathered on the courthouse steps in this award, the whole entire family around Richard III, and got their picture taken. Unbeknownst to them that the next year, everything would just fall apart. So, in summary, the Murdaugh family had held the district attorney's office for 85 years. Now, yes, we said that some of the public had scrutinized them and everything, but overall, they were a very prominent, very respected family. Now, Rudolph III did have two sons, John and Alex, that were also lawyers, but they decided not to run for office and instead worked in the family law firm that their great-great-grandfather started back in 1910. So they were a family full of lawyers. Wow, I bet family arguments were so much fun. So, of course, throughout the years, the family enjoyed their prestige, their power, their money, because they were very well off at this time. They lived in mansions, they had beach houses, they had watercraft, toys, they ran an exclusive hunting club, they owned lots of land, but it all started unraveling in 2019. So one of Rudolph III's sons, his name was Alex, and he was a fellow lawyer. Hello, darling. Hello. Alex had a son named Paul, okay? So we're going to talk about Paul. Paul was 20 years old in 2019. And one night, Paul had taken the family boat to a party that was taking place on this island somewhere. and he had 5 of his friends in the boat with him. Now, being underage, Paul had used his older brother's ID to buy alcohol, and then they were caught on video, CC camera, going into a bar and doing some shots, buying more alcohol throughout the night. So they pretty much partied hard. They were drinking pretty much all night. At 2:26 a.m., that next morning, a call came in to 911. Apparently, the boat had been crashed into some wooden pilings in a bridge, and Paul allegedly had been driving the boat. Now, due to this crash, almost everyone on the boat sustained injuries. One man broke his jaw. Most disturbingly, a young woman by the name of Mallory Beach had got thrown overboard when the boat crashed into the swirling water, and she had disappeared underneath the waves. Her body would not be found until 7 days later. When authorities were called, everybody was taken to the hospital, and allegedly what was told is that Alex, Paul's father, had showed up to the hospital, but he wasn't really there to comfort his son. He was actually going around to all of the survivors in the boat and talking to them. And a nurse claims that she overheard Alex tell one of the victims, "Keep your mouth shut." Now, court records were show that when the authorities arrived on scene, that Paul was not given like a field sobriety test, but they did test his sobriety at the hospital, and it was .286, which is 3 times over the legal limit. And remember, he's underage too. Now, Paul was never put under arrest this particular night, and during a preliminary trial, the prosecutors had requested that Paul wear a alcohol monitor bracelet, but the judge denied that, said it wasn't necessary. So this led to people thinking that, because Paul was part of this almighty Murdaugh family, that he was getting special treatment, even though a young girl was now dead because of this accident. Now, later, lawsuits would be filed both by Mallory's family, the girl that died, for wrongful death, and the family of another teen on board the boat filed a lawsuit stating that Alex, Paul's father, had encouraged them to use this particular lawyer named Corey Fleming. And Corey was very close to the Murdaugh family. Alex and Corey were like roommates in college. They were very good, tight friends. And they filed a lawsuit stating that while they were using Corey Fleming as their lawyer in all this, that they felt that Alex had influence over Corey to kind of orchestrate how Paul's trial may go. Now, 2 years after the boat crash, Paul was now looking at facing charges of 3 felonies. 1 for boating under the influence causing death, and 2 counts of boating under the influence causing great bodily harm. Now, Paul would plead not guilty to these charges, and a hearing and a trial for these charges were set for the second week of June in 2021. However, that trial would never happen. So days before Paul was set to go on trial, Paul and his mother Maggie was found dead on June 7th, 2021. Paul and Maggie had been murdered. They had been shot multiple times by multiple firearms. Alex found his son Paul and his wife Maggie on their estate down by their hunting dog kennels. Alex called authorities, and he told them that he had just arrived home because he was actually over at his terminally ill father's place, who was Randolph III. Randolph was suffering from dementia at the time, and his health was not very good. So he said he was over there visiting his father, and he had just gotten home and discovered his son and his wife dead. So authorities began an investigation into their deaths. Now, on June 10th, just 3 days later, Randolph III would end up passing away from his health problems. So at this point, Alex had lost 3 of his family members in the span of 3 days. Now, authorities would start investigating, and just out of, typical investigation, Alex was automatically considered a person of interest in Paul and Maggie's murder. But it wasn't cut and dry, because there was a lot of hate for Paul over this boating accident, and authorities thought that maybe one of the families of one of the victims on the boat, maybe they took justice into their own hands. But there were questions that would lead back to Alex, because they determined that in one of the firearms that was used to shoot Paul and Maggie, that the bullets had been traced back to a gun that was owned by the Murdaugh family. So this was all very suspicious. It was also discovered later that Maggie had hired a forensic accountant to kind of go through their family finances and the law firm's finances, because she had these suspicions that Alex was mismanaging the money. More on that in a bit. We're going to discuss another death right now. While this investigation into Paul and Maggie's murder is going on, police uncover something, and another death investigation is opened relating to a death back in 2015. So John Murdaugh, who is Alex's oldest son, who also goes by Buster, he was classmates with a young man named Stephen Smith. They graduated together. They knew each other. It doesn't sound like they were friends. But after high school, Stephen Smith enrolled in nursing school. On the night of July 8th, 2015, Stephen was driving home from night classes from his nursing school when his car ran out of gas, and so he had to pull over on the side of the road. He decided he could walk the rest of the way home or walk the rest of the way to get help, because he wasn't that far from town. Unfortunately, the next morning, Stephen was found dead on the side of the road. Now, many thought that this might have been like a hit and run thing, because it was dark, and whether it was an accident or not, he could have been hit and the people panicked and drove away. However, it was determined during his autopsy that he died of blunt force trauma, and there were no other signs or evidence of him actually getting hit by a car. Now, back in 2015, when they were investigating Stephen's death, they held a lot of police interviews. They had a tip line going on. They talked to Stephen's family. And in all of these, interviews and tip lines and everything, one name kept coming up as a suspect: John Buster Murdaugh. Now, Stephen's mother would speak out a couple months after his death and state that she thinks Stephen was killed because he had come out as gay, and that even though he was not bothering anyone, some people, and she even named John Murdaugh to the police as well, but she stated some people just can't let people live their lives. Now, authorities have not came out and stated exactly what they found in order to, relook at this investigation. All they've said is that there was a detail while investigating Paul and Maggie's murder that prompted them to look at Stephen's death with fresh eyes. Now, rumors around Stephen's case hinted of possible involvement of more than one Murdaugh, that maybe it just wasn't John, it was somebody else as well. And according to a daily newspaper article at the time of Stephen's death, they stated the case reeked of insider interference. So again, there's something suspicious going on here. Now, at this time, no one has been officially named a suspect in Stephen's case. Okay, so we're not done. There is more to this shit show. So if you need to pause and go get a drink or go to the bathroom, do this now. Now is the time. Okay, ready? Let's continue. Again, buckle up, kids. It gets way wilder. So on September 4th, 2021, this is 3 months after the death of Paul and Maggie and Randolph III, Alex was driving along a road, and the low tire indicator on his dashboard came on. So he pulled to the side of the road to check out his tire. While he was outside of his car checking out a tire, he said a man in a blue pickup pulled up, and that southern, hey, having car troubles there, and he said that when he Whoa! What are we fighting over? We okay? You kiss and make up? Sibling rivalry, I'm telling you. Anyway, so the man in the blue pickup asked Alex if he was having car problems. And before Alex could reply, he said he turned to the man and the man pulled out a gun and shot him. Now, Alex was shot in the head, but it did not kill him. He was able to call 911. And at the hospital, they determined that it was kind of like a graze. He had a small subdural hemorrhage, and then he kind of had like a cracked skull slightly. Then authorities were like, okay, wait. Is someone really trying to take this family out one by one? 2 days after Alex was shot, on September 6th, Alex would announce that he was actually going to enter drug rehab. He stated that he had been struggling with opioid addiction, but after the death of his son, wife, and father, that just exacerbated the situation, and he was just now really bad at abusing drugs. So he goes off into a treatment facility. Now, a day after that announcement, on September 7th, the family law firm, who had more members now that weren't part of the Murdaugh family, they had revealed that Alex had resigned from his position on September 3rd, which was a day before he was shot. The reason he had resigned is because an internal investigation had uncovered that Alex had misappropriated and misused funds from the family law firm. Now, remember Maggie hired that forensic accountant to check the law firm and the personal finances because of her suspicions? Yeah, I think her suspicions were correct. So the law firm had no choice but to notify law enforcement, and they notified the South Carolina Bar Association, so Alex was actually stripped of his license to practice law. Okay, so you now have the timeline. September 3rd, he resigned from being a lawyer because they found out he was misusing funds. September 4th, he gets shot. September 6th, he goes into drug treatment. Okay, so a week after all this happens, Alex is getting treatment for his opioid addiction. During this time, he contacts authorities and he decides to come clean. So on September 14th, he talks to law enforcement and he admits that he actually arranged his own shooting, like a suicide for hire type thing. He said the plan is that he was going to pay this guy to shoot him, to murder him, and then his son John Buster would get a $10 million life insurance policy payout because of it. Now, it's unknown if John was in this plot or not, but it doesn't say. I really couldn't find if John knew about this or not. But that was Alex's plan, is that he would get killed and his son would then be fine with $10 million, I guess. Now, Alex stated he hired this man named Curtis Smith, no relation to Stephen Smith. Curtis Smith was a family friend who worked as a logger for a while, but then he got hurt, and so he was doing a lot of odd jobs for the Murdaugh family. Now, when authorities talked to Curtis Smith, he told a slightly different story. He stated he had no idea about this suicide for hire plot. Curtis stated that he did meet up with Alex on the side of the road that day, but not to shoot him. What had happened is that Alex had called Curtis and he was on the brink of suicide, saying he was gonna So Curtis left his house and told Alex, sit tight, I'm on my way, we're gonna get through this. So he thought he was meeting Alex to help him to work through this. Well, when Curtis got to the side of the road, he said Alex was on his knees with a gun to his head. Curtis stated that he tried to grab the gun and they kind of wrestled the gun and the gun went off. Curtis stated that Alex told him to get out of there, so he did. And he said if he actually was there to shoot Alex, Alex would be dead. And because Alex was very much alive, Curtis was not there to shoot him. He had no idea about this suicide plot, that he was just being set up pretty much. So authorities made plans to arrest Alex, and the next day on September 15th, the day after Alex made this confession to the police was actually ramping up another investigation on another death from Alex's past. Yeah, so we're going to talk about another death now, guys. So this death has to deal with a woman named Gloria Soderfield. Now, Gloria was Alex Murdaugh's housekeeper for over 20 years. She had raised his sons, and she truly loved the Murdaugh family. And she was very proud at, being the employee of the Murdaugh family. She really truly loved the Murdaugh family and thought of them as an extension of her own family. On February 2nd, 2018, according to Alex, Gloria had tripped over some of the family dogs, and she took a tumble down some concrete steps, and she hit her head and was bleeding really bad. So they called 911. Now, I'll link the 911 call below, and you can make your own determination. But when I listened to this 911 call, it seemed a bit odd to me. First of all, if someone fell down, whether it was my house or wherever out in public, and they were bleeding from the head, my call to 911 would be more stressed, more panicked, like, oh my God, please send somebody, oh my God, please, please, please. And I would be doing everything I could to be like, what can I do to save this person? What, can I help them? What should I do? That's more like I would imagine a 911 call would go if somebody got hurt. But both Alex and who I assume was Maggie, his wife, they were both on the phone at some point. They were just like, yeah, my housekeeper fell down the stairs and she's bleeding from the head. So could you send somebody? No big deal. It was really odd. There was just no emotion in it whatsoever. And at least on 2 occasions, both Maggie and Alex, they're getting frustrated at the questions that the dispatcher's asking. They just want to get off the phone. And the dispatcher says at least twice to them, she's like, somebody is on the way, guys. Me asking you questions is not slowing them down. I have to ask these questions because I have to relay the information onto the EMTs, onto the ambulance, so they know what they're getting into by the time they get there and they can plan ahead. I mean, it was just, the whole call is weird. So the ambulance gets there. Gloria is still alive, but she's not speaking. She's just kind of mumbling. She's taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, a week later, she does succumb to her injuries and she passes away. She had a very traumatic brain injury from hitting her head on the concrete. Now, there was no autopsy done because her death certificate under cause of death said natural causes. Since when does getting a brain injury from falling down concrete steps natural causes? And in one of the trials, a coroner did go on record of saying that should have never been on there. If anything, it should have said accident or something, not natural causes. So again, weird. So at Gloria's funeral, Alex approaches Gloria's 2 sons. And he tells them, look, Gloria's been a part of our family for a long time. I want to make sure that you guys are taken care of, that you never have to worry about anything. So let's do this. You go and you file a wrongful death lawsuit on me. So they're going to file a wrongful death suit on Alex. And Alex said that his insurance will then pay out a settlement to them. And then they'll be taken care of. So the sons, because Gloria trusted Alex with everything, their sons trusted Alex as well. So Alex goes and sets them up with an attorney, Corey Fleming. The one from the boat accident that he told that family to use? Yeah. So he sets him up with Corey Fleming, and Corey Fleming sets out to do this wrongful death lawsuit. Now, by the end of 2018, Corey Fleming had secured the wrongful death lawsuit, but the sons never knew it. A settlement was paid out, but the sons never saw a dime. The sons didn't even know that the case was resolved. They read about it in 2021 when all this investigation was going on, that there was a wrongful death lawsuit and it was settled. And they were like, wait, well, where's the money? So not trusting Corey Fleming, they went and got a lawyer that was like 100 miles away from where they lived, because they didn't want this lawyer tied to the Murdaughs at all. So they got a lawyer to look into what happened. And during an investigation, it was determined that for whatever reason, the settlement was paid to Alex. And Alex diverted the money and he put it in his own bank account and never gave a dime to Gloria's family. So this prompted more charges being added to Alex, and authorities decided they were going to open an investigation into Gloria's death just to make sure it was an accident. So, as of January 25th, 2022, Alex faces 74 charges, including misuse of funds, insurance fraud, and this suicide for hire plot. That's just to name the major ones. And if he was convicted of all 74 of these charges, he's looking at up to 730 years in jail. And along with these, state and federal charges, he's also looking at 7 civil lawsuits filed against him as well, from, the boat accident, Mallory's death, the injuries on the boat, the victims that he defrauded, including Gloria's sons. He frauded a lot of victims through the law firm. It's just a mess, guys. He's all over the place. Now, as far as the charges that Paul was facing, after his death, all those charges were dropped on Paul. But the civil lawsuits are going forward on Alex, because the Mallory's family had filed a civil lawsuit saying that, there was beer on the boat, and that Alex, kind of provided his underage son beer and, all that stuff. So that's still pending along with everything else. Now, Alex has been adamant since the beginning, and his attorney keeps repeating it on talk shows and everything else, that Alex was not responsible or had nothing to do with Paul and Maggie's death. And when they added, that they were investigating Gloria's death, he stated that he had nothing to do with Gloria's death, that it was an accident. He had also come out and said that his family was not involved in Stephen Smith's death in 2015 either, that they're just adding these charges onto him because now he's the bad guy for misuse of money. All 4 deaths are still being investigated, and authorities refuse to really give any details on the status because it's an ongoing case at this time. Now, Corey Fleming, that was Alex's good lawyer friend that he kept pointing people to, he got sued by Gloria's sons, and he settled out of court and agreed to give them back the fees that the sons paid him to file this wrongful death lawsuit on their mother. Corey's license was temporarily suspended, so he could not practice law. Don't know if he'll get it back or not. It's still suspended at this time. Alex currently sits behind jail walls in South Carolina awaiting trial, and he is held on $7 million bond. Alex's attorney would come out and say that Alex's opioid addiction is the reason behind this whole, money mess, and misuse of funds and all that stuff. That sober Alex is the pinnacle of the Murdaugh family legacy that everybody should, give him a break for, that nobody's good on drugs, which is true. So, but, there's just other suspicious things around these deaths that I just can't let that go. Look, if you misuse money, you have victims, you are on drugs, I get it. You need to either do your time, pay them back, do whatever you need to do. But there's just a lot of suspicion around these deaths I just can't get over. So I'll try, but we'll see what happens in the trial. Here's a funny tidbit. And this is what makes me think that John, Alex's son, knows more and, I don't know, might be involved in some shady stuff. But after Alex was arrested, Alex had signed over power of attorney to his son, John. This is his oldest son. To start like selling off and disposing of assets, which John started doing. John was found in a casino in Las Vegas. So let me explain a little bit. If all of Alex's assets are gone and he's found guilty in either the civil lawsuits or the lawsuits that are going on, he's going to have to, pay these victims back, right? If he has no assets to do that, then nobody gets paid back and nobody gets any money. And gambling is probably the fastest way to lose your assets. Now, I'm not saying that's what John was doing, but it didn't look good, and the court didn't like seeing that. So they pulled the power of attorney from John, and now the whole entire Murdaugh estate is frozen, and it's managed by an independent firm that has nothing to do with the Murdaughs. John and Alex didn't like that being done because, along with some other things, I guess, I don't know if John works at the firm anymore, but I don't think he does, because the firm had come out, the family law firm they started, the firm had come out and said they actually removed Murdaugh from the name altogether. So I don't think John works there anymore, and I don't know if he has a job anywhere else, but basically, John had complained that he has no money for basic necessities, and so they were trying to get this frozen asset removed, or at least get some allowance or something. But anyway, the court said no. But it's just interesting of, if you have that much money, because there's like millions of dollars involved here. We're not talking $100,000 or something. We're talking millions and millions of dollars. It just makes me wonder what their definition of basic necessities are. I get John's walking free. I'm sure he has enough money for food. That's what he's saying. He didn't have enough money for food and all that. And it's, Alex, you're in jail. You have your basic necessities. Shut up. Overall, it just looks really bad, because then Alex also filed a claim to disclaim his wife Maggie's estate. She came from a prominent family, and so her estate is worth a couple $1,000,000 itself. And so he filed a claim that he was going to disclaim it, that it shouldn't go to him, which then looks bad because the will left everything to him. And of course, if he's not found guilty of a murder, he gets this. Well, by filing it to disclaim it, it just looks like he's trying to not add to his assets. So yeah, it just gets really messy really quickly, and he's not looking good at all. So you can probably see his game here, right? What a mess. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments down below. If you'd like to become a feline friend, please hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to become a feline fan, please hit that join button for special perks. And I'll try to keep everyone updated once the trial goes. I have no idea when it's supposed to start. So thank you, everyone, and I will see you in the next true crime case or mystery. Bye, guys.